Welcome to Candlewick Library. I'm Cheryl. Today I want to talk about what I learned during Lent this year. This year was the first year that I really did anything for Lent. When I was still a Mormon, that is just something that we didn't do. You will see nowadays, you'll see a lot of people who are Mormon celebrating Holy Week and Palm Sunday, Good Friday, all of those things, even wearing crosses and stuff that go along with it. When I was growing up Mormon, those were all no-nos. And in fact, on the church website, they say on there that they do not celebrate Lent, Ash Wednesday, or Holy Week. And so that has become a cultural thing as they've tried to kind of infiltrate more into the mainstream Christianity, that they've started to do those things and encourage it more. And more members have started to do those things and implement the things more. So when I was still a Mormon, I definitely would not have celebrated Lent. I don't even think I knew what it was until the last probably 6-7 years. And I didn't even think about trying to do anything for it until this year. I've been following a book called Sacred Seasons and trying to have more of a liturgical calendar in our life, trying new things, celebrating the holiday seasons instead of just the holidays. And one of the things in it then, of course, is Lent. And so I knew that I wanted to do it this year. So then the problem was trying to figure out, what do I want to do for Lent? If you're supposed to give up something and learn something, my brain, it kind of goes fast a lot. Sometimes I feel like I have way too many tabs open in my brain. And I thought maybe social media, maybe taking away some social media will help with that. It will be a season of not having as many distractions. So going into Lent, I was thinking I'm going to not go on Facebook. I'm not going to go on Instagram. I will still use YouTube. I'm going to be a little bit more intentional there as well. And I kind of failed. Not completely. The first few weeks of Lent, I was completely off of Facebook and Instagram. And then I started to get messages on Instagram. And so I thought, okay, well, I have to go and check my messages. And so I would go in and check the messages. And then I noticed the last few weeks of Lent that I would go on to check a message and all of a sudden I would be scrolling and without even realizing I was doing it. So that I felt really bad about that because again, with my Mormon background, I can be very legalistic and I have to fight against that constantly now. And so I get really hard on myself when I don't do something perfectly. So I had to give myself a lot of grace with that goal. But the funny thing is that through my Lent devotional and the learning I was doing, I realized by the end of it that that wasn't what I even needed to have given up during Lent. It's not what I needed to be working on. Even though that was something helpful, and I do think that moving forward, I do need to make sure I'm being more intentional with social media as well. I think I actually do pretty well with that, but we can always do better. I think I can always do better. There was something else that was really brought out to me during this time period, and that is what I'm going to be talking about today. I've shared on here that I was doing the Lent Daily program that was happening on the Hallow app. And along with that, they were reading the brothers Karamazov and a book called The Return of the Prodigal Son. And so I would read from them every morning, and then I would listen to whatever the daily thing was on the Hallow app. What I've realized that I should have been focusing on, and I will be focusing on in myself moving forward, is pride. I've never thought of myself as a prideful person. I have never thought I was better than anyone else. I take pride in things sometimes and have been proud of things sometimes, but I've never really been somebody that, in my mind, what I think of when I think of as a prideful person. So why then would that be what I need to focus on? To understand this, you have to go backwards. And this goes back to what I was talking about a minute ago, my ex-Mormon background. I'm not going to talk about all of that right now because that is a different video. I've made videos about Mormonism. I've made videos about why I left Mormonism. What I haven't talked a lot about in detail is the way I was treated when I left Mormonism. There are a lot of people online that will say that it's a cult. And then there are people that will push back on that and say, of course it's not. You can leave. It's not dangerous to leave. And, I've said before it was in the beginning, but that's true. Here, you can just stop going to church and nobody's going to come after you and try to kidnap you back. It is not dangerous in that way. However, they will, if you don't remove your records, and sometimes even if you do, they will follow you. So wherever you go, people from the church will show up and somehow know where you are. So they do keep track of you, even when you leave. I am no longer a member on paper. I had my records removed. My husband hasn't had his removed yet. They visit, missionaries show up all the time. Things get left on our doors, things like that. But what a lot of people don't understand is that while it's not dangerous to leave, necessarily. I mean, I think for some people it might be, depending on their families. But while it's not dangerous, it is hard. There is very rarely going to be a person that leaves the Mormon church gracefully or easily. And a lot happens to you. You lose a lot of people. I and my family, we have lost almost all of our community. So when people say that it's not, and you hear that, you need to kind of keep that in mind too. That if you move to Utah and you live here and you're not Mormon, most of the time the people are going to be very friendly to you. And even if you live somewhere else, if you meet Mormons and you are have never been a Mormon and you don't say anything bad about it, they're going to be very friendly to you. But when you are an ex-Mormon, and especially an ex-Mormon that talks about the Mormon church, you are not going to be treated nicely by most of the Mormons. And it has been an extremely hard situation. It's been an extremely hard few years. And sorry, I might get a little bit raw on this video. I try not to do that on my videos very often, but it still hurts. There are a lot of things that have been very, very painful for my family. Again, I'm not going to talk in detail, but I'm going to bring up a few things. I had many family members who made sure to reach out and tell me they still loved me, which to me, like, they're trying to be nice, but there is something about that when you leave a church and somebody's like, well, I still love you. Well, why wouldn't you still love me? You know, that is kind of the feeling you get when people say that to you. I've gotten a lot of people saying, well, you know, we respect your agency, but we have to bow out. And I had a family member who was my best friend since we were little children. And that person has blocked me on all social media, never contacts me in person. We had a family gathering we had to go to, and when we met there, it was almost like strangers. That was a very hard thing to go through. I also had a situation where a very close family member kicked me out of their house, screaming at me and told some lies about things about me, things that I didn't say that this person said I said. That family member months later did apologize, and I was able to apologize for my part in that conversation that led to that. It still, to this day, is probably one of the most painful moments of my life. And this also wasn't, it was in front of a lot of people. And I have family members that when I come into a room, they will leave. I've had family members tell me that they've tried to watch my YouTube videos, but they get such a dark feeling, so they can't. Family members who have questioned whether I ever had the Spirit of God in me, and rumors have been spread. I have lost most of my friends. There are only a few of my friends who are still active Mormon who have anything to do with me anymore. It's really hard to live in Utah, in the middle of a neighborhood, a town, a county, a state, that almost everyone is Mormon, or at least the ones that are surrounding us, and not be a part of it, and to lose that. It's been very hard to find a community for us to be in now. And in the midst of that, there are people I don't even know who say things about me. One day on Facebook, I made a comment on something that it wasn't a trolling comment. It was a comment about, I can't even remember what it was like a news report or something. And I said a comment about it. A woman who I didn't even know commented under me and tagged me in it so that everybody I knew on Facebook would have seen it. She was telling everybody that I had cheated on my husband, and that was why I left the church. That she knew me, and she knew this for a fact. And this was not true, obviously. I did not know this person, never met her in my life, never seen her before, never heard of her. I did not cheat on my husband, and that was not why I left the church. I woke up to this in the morning, and I had a bunch of notifications on Facebook, so I went on to look, and there were so many people that were like, oh, that makes sense. Oh, yeah, she thought she could get away with it. Wow, thanks for sharing this so that we all know. These ex-Mormons trying to get away with stuff, acting innocent. I called my mom just bawling because I couldn't believe that somebody would make up a lie like that about me and put it out and everybody was going to see it. And I went on and I deleted my comments so that it would delete hers. I had no idea how many people saw that before I was able to get to it. That really was the start of something inside of me coming back up that I didn't know was there. And that was this desire to be understood. Quite often over the last few years, I've said, I don't necessarily care anymore if people like me or don't like me. Like, I don't need to be the most popular person in the room. I don't need everyone to stick around, but I do want people to understand me. And I want people to know I'm telling the truth. And that's what makes me the most mad, is when people pretend like what I'm saying is false. What they act like the things that I've made videos about have been lies, or they don't want to try to understand me. And this can go for a lot of different things. It can be anything in life, that I don't care if people agree with me, but I want them to understand me. And I hate being misunderstood. And I hate being falsely represented. As I've been dealing with this feeling of being frustrated that people didn't understand me, that people were misinterpreting me, misunderstanding me, lying about me, I saw a quote on Instagram that Keisha at A Book Like You shared. I don't remember who she was sharing it from or why she was sharing it or even when she shared it, but I wrote it down in my planner. The quote was this: "Our craving to be understood, mine included, is not noble, it's pride." And when I saw that, it really hit me. And so I wrote it down, and I've been thinking about it now for months, asking myself, is this pride? Is this feeling that I'm feeling, is this really pride? It wasn't until Lent, though, that I fully understood how it applies to me, that I have to be bold and in my faith, in my interests, in the things that I believe and think, even if they don't match up with people around me, and not care what people think. Obviously, I don't want to hurt people's feelings. I don't want to offend people on purpose, but I also have to just learn how to be true to myself. And if I lose followers on YouTube, or if I lose friends in real life or on YouTube, I've done it before and I've dealt with it before. And I just have to not care. But also, if they just don't understand me, they don't need to understand me. And that is a hard thing for me to say. It's a hard thing for me to accept. So how did this come out in Lent? There was something read on day one by, I believe she's a nun named Sister Miriam. It was so meaningful to me that it brought up some feelings and things that I'm very sensitive to that I didn't realize. But I'm going to get back to that in just a moment. I just want you to know it was day one that this happened, and then I will get back to it. So I started reading The Brothers K. As they were studying it, and as I was listening to some lectures outside of Hallow about it, there's a lot of talk about the brothers. In the Hallow program, they were comparing the brothers to different characters in The Prodigal Son. And first we talked about the younger son. And the younger son is the one I always related to because I had a rebellious past. I was rebellious in my teenage years in junior high school, and I've always had kind of a rebellious spirit. And so I have related a lot to that character. I thought if I'm anybody in this story, it's probably the younger son. And hopefully I've come back home. Hopefully I'm either there or I'm on the journey there. But it was through this study and reading the book that I learned that actually right now in this stage of life, I am more like the older son. That's something I don't want to be. He has so much anger and pride, the self-righteousness he has. I don't necessarily think I have the self-righteousness because I know how many people know more than I do, and I am constantly trying to learn more and be better. But I definitely have that pride that I've just been talking about of wanting to be understood. And if that is pride, then I have that in abundance. But I also have a lot of bitterness and anger in me right now. And that is toward the Mormon church, and it is justified toward that church and its leaders. However, sometimes it trickles down to the members and to my family members, friends, anybody I know, people I see that are Mormon, because probably of how I've been treated and how I get so frustrated at how they talk about the religion and ex-Mormons. So this stubborn pride has led to resentment. And I feel like that is why I am more like the older son. So when I'm talking about the book, I'm just going to say Brothers K every time. So in it, about Father Sosima, it says he falls into a vicious cycle of self-consciousness, constantly concerned with his reputation before others. Father Sosima does something because of that. He ends up in a place where he shouldn't. But then he does something that allows his peers to laugh at him, for the society to laugh at him. Then it said, this new man within him is more important than the opinion of others. And I thought, when I read that part, after I've been struggling with these feelings and realizing this pride that I had, I thought, how do I get to that place where I realize what I'm doing, I do the right thing, but not just I do the right thing, but I also don't care that they're laughing at me. I don't care what they're saying about me. How do I get to that place? In the book, The Return of the Prodigal Son, it's by Father Henry Nouwen. He said, many of my daily preoccupations suggest that I belong more to the world than to God. A little criticism makes me angry, and a little rejection makes me depressed. A little praise raises my spirits, and a little success excites me. Often I am like a small boat on the ocean, completely at the mercy of its waves. All the time and energy I spend in keeping some kind of balance and preventing myself from being tipped over and drowning shows that my life is mostly a struggle for survival, not a holy struggle, but an anxious struggle, resulting from the mistaken idea that it is the world that defines me. When I read that alongside what I was reading in Brothers K, alongside what I was listening to in the Hallow app, there was like something inside of me that kind of broke open. And so I want to share now what happened on that first day. On the first day, Sister Miriam prayed the Litany of Humility. And she said this is usually prayed every year on Ash Wednesday. For the sake of time, I'm not going to read the entire thing, but I'm going to read each of the lines. And in between each of these lines, you would say, "Deliver me, Jesus." So, for example, I would say first, "From the desire of being esteemed, deliver me, Jesus." And then I would say the next one. But I'm just going to go through the things that we're asking Jesus to deliver us from. So the desire of being esteemed, the desire of being honored, the desire of being praised, the desire of being preferred to others, the desire of being consulted, the desire of being approved, from the fear of being humiliated, the fear of being despised, the fear of suffering rebukes, the fear of being forgotten, the fear of being ridiculed, the fear of being wronged. And then it asks for Jesus to grant me the grace to desire that others may be loved more than I, that others may be esteemed more than I, that in the opinion of the world, others may increase and I may decrease, that others may be chosen and I set aside, that others may be praised and I go unnoticed, that others may be preferred to me in every way, that others may become holier than I, provided that I may become as holy as I should. Why did that affect me so much? I was talking to Doug pretty soon, a couple of days in, because that, and then the days following with what they were talking about with the prodigal son stuff and what I was reading, really, like I said, it broke something open in me. And Doug said, "Why do you care so much about what everybody else is thinking about you? Why are you letting it affect you so much?" Because there was something in his family that happened that I was bringing up. And it was like all of those mornings, those past few days came flooding into me. And I was telling him how when we were first dating, I had some people tell me that his family didn't really approve of me because I was divorced. Somebody that I worked with knew one of his siblings and had told the sibling that I had just barely returned to the Mormon church after a few years of being away from it. And so I felt like I had to prove myself to them, to show them why they would want me as a sister-in-law, as a daughter-in-law. I have never stopped trying to prove myself. And I don't think I realized that until that moment, that I've done that with his family, but I also was doing that in the church because I was never good enough. I was never quite like so many of the Mormon women around me, with the same desires that they had, with the same personalities that they had. We moved into an area in Provo, Utah, and that was when I started homeschooling my kids because of some situations at school. People at church would talk about me and about homeschooling right in front of me. And there were so many things that happened in that house and in that neighborhood that I got to a place where I was very hopeless in feeling like I just felt like I felt like I had to prove everything. My kids had to be the smartest to prove that homeschooling was okay. Like there were so many things. There was a lot of, again, having to prove myself. In my own family, I have felt like most of my life I lived in the shadow of my older sister. And not that anybody was doing that on purpose, but it just our personalities are that way. And so I have felt like since leaving the church, those parts have come out in full swing again, where I feel like I have to prove myself because I don't want to fall into all of these stereotypes that everyone is expecting of us. They're expecting bad things to happen to us. They're expecting us to have all sorts of trials and to become horrible people because we've left the church and all of these things. I can never let on when things aren't perfect or when I'm upset about stuff when we're around them. And with most people, I'm a pretty open book. I think recently on YouTube, we did the Pink Cat Ladies thing. And I think it was Alma said that I was an open book. And I am on here. But in my real life, I am much more reserved. I will tell anybody anything if they ask me a question, but I still don't feel safe with a lot of people that are our family and friends that are still part of the church because I know how I'm being judged, and something that would have been a trial 6 years ago now is a punishment in their eyes. Listening to those things where I am asking Jesus to deliver me from wanting to be chosen first and loved and that I can desire being overlooked and forgotten, it was like me asking for the things that have hurt me the most over the past 5 years, if that makes any sense. And when I realized that those things that have hurt me the most, they come from me doing the right thing. That's kind of a huge thing to acknowledge. It's kind of a huge thing to figure out. And so I should be desiring those things. I should be desiring the humility of realizing what God has saved me from. And that sounds really dramatic, but I promise it's how it feels. And that I don't have to continue proving myself to anybody. All I have to do is be who I need to be, who I am, who God created me to be, care about what He thinks of me. And I don't have to prove myself. I don't have to be understood. God knows. He knows I'm telling the truth about things. God knows who I am, what kind of life I live. And if He knows, then it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. In the Hallow Lent, we were praying a particular prayer all month, which was, empty me, fill me, use me. It came from Mother Olga, a nun. And Sister Miriam shared this using that prayer. And she said, the transformation that is possible when someone fully accepts their identity as a son or daughter of God, He shows us the ripple effect of love that comes from a little surrendering to the Lord. Also, in the Brothers K, there is the Grand Inquisitor section with Yvonne. I also realized that while I'm reading The Prodigal Son and I'm relating to the older brother who isn't who I want to relate to, I'm also reading Brothers K and I'm relating to Yvonne, who is not the person I would want to relate to in that either. And part of that is on page 318 to 320, there are a few sections that really stuck out to me. And he's talking about the horrible things that humans have done in this earth. And he says, I want retribution. Otherwise, I shall destroy myself. And retribution not at some place and some time in infinity, but here upon earth, and in such a way that I see it for myself. And then at another part, he said, I want with my own eyes to see the lion lie down beside the fallow deer, and the one who has been slaughtered get up and embrace the one who has killed him. I want to be here when everyone suddenly discovers why it has all been the way it has. When he is talking about mothers forgiving the people who had tortured children, he said, I do not want the mother to embrace the torturer who tore her son to pieces with his dogs. Let her dare not to forgive him. Let me rather remain with my unavenged suffering and unassuaged indignation, even though I am not right. And I wrote next to that really big, I feel this so much. Because the other part of me that has been around my whole life is that I crave justice. I see things that are wrong and I let myself get too worked up about them. And where I think a lot of people can leave the Mormon church or believe it's wrong, but they're like, but hey, as long as the people are doing good things and are happy, then we should support them. And I'm like, I want to tear down that church from the foundations, rock by rock. I would tear it all down if I could.
So much, it flames on the side of my face.
And that's not necessarily healthy. I mean, I think it's understandable. I have so much of that resentment built up in me, that anger toward this church of what it has done to people throughout the time it has been on this earth, what it is still doing to people today. The fact that when you are a part of it, you have no idea what you are a part of, even though you think you do. And I'm speaking from experience. There are many Mormons who would just tear me apart for saying that. And what they often don't think about is the fact that they've never been on my side, but I have been on theirs. I know what it feels like to dismiss things that don't feel right and don't sound right because you believe so strongly something is true and you want it to be true. And so you cannot let yourself hear those things, think about those things. And I have so much trauma built up in me from being a Mormon. And so when I read that part, Yvonne's revenge, like I feel that. I want that too. He gives the story about the Grand Inquisitor, and I think it's one of the most powerful things I've ever read in literature. There is a part with Jesus, and Jesus is being berated. And in real life, Jesus was berated. Jesus was treated way worse than I can ever imagine being treated. His response is silence and a kiss. And in the book, there's someone else who also responds that way. And I thought, how do I do that? How do I respond with silence and a kiss? Surrender is a process. Just because I've realized that this is my thorn in my side, this is the thing I need to work on, that I should have had as my intention for Lent, doesn't mean it's going to be easy to get rid of it. It doesn't mean I'm going to be able to get rid of it now. It doesn't mean I'll be able to get rid of it in a year or maybe even ever. But it is the thing that I need to be focused on with myself and God to try to figure out, how can God use me in that prayer? Empty me, fill me, use me. In this Hallow program, Father Mike was doing the homily on Sundays. And there were so many things I wrote down from those. And because, like I said, that resentment is trickling down to some people and how I look at people and how I react to people talking about certain things, I wrote all of this down. He said, what's one of the most deadly things that could happen in the heart of someone who's trying to be good is resentment. You see other people who are rebellious and they're not disqualified. Other people who have turned away from the Lord and they're being pursued. Other people who have done the wrong thing and they're still loved. Not only loved, restored. Not only that, they're celebrated. The older son wants the same thing as the younger son, a life apart from the father. It's possible to stay home and remain lost. There are few things more deadly than resentment. Resentment slowly rewrites the story of what happened so that your wound becomes the lens through which you interpret everything. Resentment is what happens to us when we let one chapter become the title of the whole book. That something painful happened, yes, and it is real, and it is painful, and it deserves a paragraph. Maybe it deserves a chapter. But resentment turns it into, this is my story. It's not just remembering what happened, it's letting it narrate who I am. A healthy autobiography would integrate the worst chapter, but resentment canonizes it. Resentment turns a chapter into a monument. Resentment names the book after your wound. It doesn't have the power to move. It has the power to paralyze. And all of these things need to be shared. All of these things need to be said. When I was leaving, it was so helpful to hear stories from other people who had gone through the same things. It's still helpful to hear that. It is healing, actually, to hear other people telling their stories that are similar. But I also don't want it to be my whole story. Our wounds are important, and they won't ever go completely away. Mormonism is going to be a huge part of my life forever, unfortunately, and my children's. They have trauma too from it. My husband has a lot of trauma from it. This is not something we can get rid of, probably ever, but especially not quickly, and especially not while we're in Utah and we're surrounded by family who are almost all still Mormon. How do I move forward out of that? How do I take my wounds and have them in their proper place where they do inform my life? They do help me to see things in different ways. They help me to learn and grow and be compassionate without having the resentment toward other people and without letting it define who I am. That resentment and that pride. How do I get to a place where I don't have to change everyone else? I don't have to get everybody out of the church. I don't have to destroy it. And I don't have to care what they say about me, what they think about me, all of that. Can God use me even with all of this? Father Mike said, God does not waste our wounds. All of this can be used. Nothing given to God is ever wasted because he's involved. God can use every part of your story. So how do I do that? How do I go forward from this Lent realization that I am prideful, that I am holding on too much to this resentment and hurt from other people not understanding me? It isn't noble to want to be understood. It's pride. How do I get out of that? 1, tell your speech to the Father. Empty me. 2, in silence, listen to his voice. Fill me. Sister Miriam also said, come to the cross and lay it down. Doubts, griefs, pain, pile them up as high as you need to. There is nothing too heavy, nothing too small, nothing too messy to bring to the Lord. Maybe you want to shout like the Inquisitor. Maybe you have a list of grievances to air. Bring that too. Christ can handle it. He's not afraid of your anger. He's not afraid of your doubts. He's not overwhelmed by your questions. She referenced St. Paul's letter to the Philippians. Do nothing out of selfishness, out of vainglory. Rather, humbly regard others as more important than yourselves. So at the end of this Lent season, I had been in the midst of all of those wounds for the whole time, pulling that out every single day. How do I not care about this? How do I let people misunderstand me? How do I let people lie about me? How do I let people not know who I am? And how do I not feel like I have to go out and tell everybody that they're wrong about who Jesus is? Like I said, this is going to be a process for me. But it is what I'm going to be working on over who knows how long. But it is what I'm going to be planning on working on here on out. And I think it's really interesting that I went into Lent with one thing that I thought would be really helpful to me. I feel like God showed me what it is I really need to be working on. And I don't know exactly how to do it. I don't know exactly how to let go of the resentment and pain that I feel. I don't know exactly how to not have a negative attitude toward Mormons when I hear them talking about Christianity as if what they believe is exactly the same as other Christians. I have to always put myself back in that spot and remember that I used to think the same thing. I'm not sure how to not be angry when I see garments changing and that women can wear tank tops now, and people saying it was never about modesty when I was made to feel bad for wearing tank tops when I was younger. We were always told it was about modesty. I don't know how to deal with knowing what the church leaders are like, the lies that they've told, and then see people that I care about quoting them and saying how wonderful they are. I don't know how to deal with all of that. Like I said, it's going to be a process. And there's some of it that I don't have to let go of, but what I do have to let go of is how it is making me feel, how it is keeping me riled up, how it is making me feel prideful by being angry and resentful. That was just some thoughts I've had. I felt like this was such a big thing, and I felt like there was probably other people out there that are feeling the same way, maybe not toward the Mormon church, but maybe towards something else. And maybe this would be helpful to you. I highly recommend the program, and you can go on the Hallow app and go back and join it. I don't think you have to be a member to do it. I did like a free trial, but I think I was going to be able to do it without the free trial. But I highly recommend it. I think that this shows sometimes the power of great literature, where someone can write something across the world at a different time period, and then I can read it in my life and have it mean so much to me and bring out things in me that I didn't even know I needed to bring out and examine and be honest about to be able to move forward. So hopefully this helps anyone who might be dealing with this kind of stuff too. And if you deal with the same kind of stuff, maybe we can help each other through it.